My name is Lee. I'm in KOD Lyons at the moment. I'm very lucky to have my guest from KOD, Stephen Coven and Granny Whelan.
Thank you very much, Lee. Yes, my name is Gráinne Whelan and I'm a senior consultant solicitor here at KOD Lyons Solicitors in Dublin 8. We are a firm at the forefront of legal developments in areas such as immigration law, asylum law, human rights, criminal law, white-collar crime, business law, and many other areas of litigation such as equality law. We have collective experience of over 50 years with all the solicitors involved in various departments across our firm. And we are delighted to be in a position today to answer any questions you might have.
Just rumors were saying that student visa holders came to Ireland before 2010 can apply for long-term residency now in the country. I'm just wondering if you or Steve can give me answer. Is that true? Or I heard there was a case involved in the Supreme Court.
Both of the cases, basically Luxman and Balchan, came to the Supreme Court because what they said was that was extremely unfair, that there was people who had grown up in this country, that had lived here for 10, 11, 12 years and were ultimately part of the state, and to refuse their applications outright was very unfair. So what has happened in the Supreme Court now is ultimately that all of the students who were here at that stage, who may now be out of status, can now apply to regularise their position and seek a stamp 4.
Okay.
Now, your listeners and your viewers need to be very made aware that it's not an automatic right.
Okay, I see.
So it is something that you do have to apply on a case-by-case basis. And the other difficulty at the moment is that the minister is concocting a scheme. He's coming up with a scheme to determine who may be applicable and who mightn't be applicable.
So on certain condition in the...
Very much so. And
okay.
we found with the clients who've come to us, we've hundreds of clients who are affected by this very issue. And look, it's very unfortunate at the moment for them, but it's also a very good time for them to come and seek legal advice, because what we are concerned about in this firm is that if the minister introduces a scheme and those people who are eligible haven't applied for regularisation of their status, that they may be left behind with a change in the law.
And what is the benefit to have a legal representative?
Having legal representation in this particular area, in all areas, but particularly in relation to immigration, it is absolutely important, as there's a certain amount of form filling, but within that you have a huge area of legal input that is required. And no matter how good you are doing it alone, I think you will always have a much better chance of success with proper legal consultation and input within that. Ultimately, we have to persuade the minister to grant the application, and with our experience and our expertise in this particular matter, we think that the Chinese community within Ireland would have a much better chance of success in their applications with legal representation.
So the rule at the moment, the current rule, if you do not have Irish associations, so if you're not married to an Irish citizen or have an Irish child, you have to have 5 years residency within the last 9 years. So anyone who's on a stamp 4 or got a stamp 4 in 2012 most likely will have stayed on a stamp 4 since 2012, so will meet the criteria of having 5 years continuous residency. But ultimately what we would say is to anyone who's planning on applying for citizenship or naturalisation, that ultimately, look, they come to us. If there is a reason they've been absent from the state for a period of time, that they let us argue that on their behalf. It is ultimately the minister's discretion. But as I said, the policy at the moment has been anyone who's been absent for 6 weeks in the year prior to their application is finding it difficult.
Well, as far as I know, that do they come from different departments? Like the passport would be Department of Foreign Affairs, and the other one would be Department of Justice.
Well, you're right, absolutely correct.
So, can I ask a question? Maybe not. You don't have to answer this, okay? If anything involved, but can I apply two things together?
Of course, absolutely.
You can.
It's possible, and in some cases that's what we do. However, what we would advise is that some applications are more likely to succeed than others, and that's why you come to us.
I see.
It's not just look, it is a matter that you can apply it for both. Absolutely,
Yeah.
there's no issue with that, and the minister can decide which one to grant. Yeah.
That's something
it.
new for today.
There's an old
anyway.
Irish proverb that says, "Is fada an boher nach bhfuil casa an," and it means it's as long as the road that doesn't have a turn. And I think that's very particular to immigration law, as there are many twists and turns, and certainly we're here to help and assist and navigate people along that road if at all possible.
Time. It's all based on the length of the passport that you have. So a stamp 5 is without condition, it's the time. You can keep your Chinese passport. Basically, a stamp 6 is a little bit different in that it's when you have applied for Irish naturalisation but you only want to carry one passport. So for example, I'm a dual citizen. I have an American passport and an Irish passport.
Yeah.
I could apply for a stamp 6 permission, which would mean I wouldn't have to hold my Irish passport, that on my US passport it would say I have an unlimited right of entry to Ireland. So they're slightly different.
Well, just my question: would you able to work on that stamp 6 visas or?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
It does the exact same thing as a stamp 4.
Okay.
All it means is that you don't have to go in and renew every time. It literally sits on your passport, and every time you get a renewal, you make sure that stamp is on it. But what I would say to people who don't want to apply for citizenship, the without condition as the time stamp, which is a stamp 5, is a very good alternative. It's not something we see very often, but with the business community becoming more active and
growing,
interwoven, it's a much smarter option for business.
Yes, definitely for business travellers.
Do we do any side of for the business kind of
Absolutely.
perspective?
So we have various departments within the firm, as you mentioned. We have a very strong immigration and asylum department, as well as criminal and white collar crime. But we also have a very strong litigation and employment law department. So services that we can certainly offer Chinese companies thinking of coming to Ireland is we can assist them with their immigration matters if they want to come over and reside here. We can also assist them in relation to company law matters and incorporation of their companies in Ireland. If wanted, we can assist them with their employee and employment law matters, whether it is contracts of employment, employee handbooks, and memorandums of associations and things like that. That is something within our area of expertise, and contract law, of course, and that can be ordinary contracts, commercial contracts, complicated matters. We have a department who can handle that. We would, of course, use the assistance of a translation service. I think it's very important. And within that, then, we would sit down and identify the needs of the client going forward. The way we work here at KOD Lyons is that the first consultation we've always dealt with on a no-fee basis. Because it's very important, as I say, to identify whether or not we can assist, or alternatively, if we're conflicted in any way. And sometimes that can happen with big businesses. So it's very much the first consultation we'd sit down and get an idea of where it is the client has needs.
That's very good. Thank you so much. I'm just wondering if there is any changes or update this year.
Well, there is. I mean, not necessarily this year, but the scheme generally has changed massively over the last 2 and 3 years. Ultimately, there are two main ways in which you can apply for a permit that we would advise. There are numbers of different permits which actually exist, but the two main ones are general and critical skills. And depending on which category you fall into, what type of work that you're seeking to get, whether or not your job is on the highly skilled occupational list, there's a number of different criteria which are there, and we'll be able to advise clients very fully on it, and we do on a daily basis. Again, EU procurement rules are very funny in terms of how many staff you can have that are EEA resident and non-EEA, and there's a number of very complex transactional pieces of regulation and work that need to be done, and ultimately that's why we're here. We're here to advise businesses on that. We're here to advise businesses on how to advertise for those jobs, how to meet the labour market test, which is a key component to applying for a general work permit. We're there to advise them on whether or not the job can be changed to fall within the critical skills list, which again is something that as linguists and as really the main role there is employment, right, with the Minister of Employment and Jobs. Because ultimately, once that's granted, the Minister for Justice tends to rubber stamp it.
Okay, I see.
So once you've actually met the criteria, it tends to be quite formal. But again, if you're not familiar with the criteria, if this is the first work permit you've done, it can be quite confusing to deal with more than one body. And Gráinne, as someone, as a practitioner, deals with many different departments on a daily basis. That is why we are trained. That is why we are here to assist.
Exactly.
And we would say to business owners in particular, you know, it is a much smarter investment to come to a solicitor and do it right the first time.
One last question there. You know, I have been asked lots of things today, but I'm just wondering, that has already happened for my friends who work in the Chinese company overseas in Ireland, and how can they apply for a family reunion, because they would very much like their family to join them?
And ultimately, how that scheme is administered, right? The Minister for Justice administers that scheme. They follow a guideline. It's the non-EEA Family Reunification Guidelines. And within those guidelines, they have very specific criteria in terms of financial criteria and also duration of connection in the state. But again, on a case-by-case basis, we can make a determination with the client as to how much money needs to be earned, but ultimately there are financial criteria is the biggest one. So currently, for your spouse, you have to have earned €40,000 over the last 2 years. So that means you haven't claimed any social welfare, and that essentially you've been in employment for most people. If you're on a stamp 4 permission and not a citizen of the country, the criteria is higher again. It's based on whether or not you would be in receipt of family income supplement per year. That's generally how they base the calculation. It's a strange one, but the reason they do it is because a lot of people will bring their spouse and maybe their children with them. So they have a set formula for that. Currently the rate is anything really between 35 and 40,000. And then if you're applying for an elderly dependent or a non-direct relative, so like an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent, you would really want to be earning over €60,000 a year to be in compliance with the guidelines.
But also have a certain amount saved.
You would want to be able to show
very
it.
strict financial conditions.
But having said that, having said all of that, again, coming to somewhere like this, there may be other factors that can be highlighted in your application, and the minister can ultimately depart from the need to adhere strictly.
Like case by case.
Exactly.
There is still a case-by-case assessment, and again, that's why we would say, you know, while we would love to offer general advice to clients, it can be quite difficult because someone might come in and there could be a very different factor to their case that actually makes it much stronger.
And one other thing that I would say to your viewers and listeners is that if they have been refused for one reason or another, to come to us and talk to us, because we might be able to find something within that refusal that we can work with and see if we can overturn.
So it's not over yet once you get it.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
Well, that's very good to know. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you for your time.